Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tell Me Everything Fraud Girl Friday series. I'm your host, Danielle Spinelli. And this whole month, we are talking about cluster theft and BOL manipulation. Today, we're really focusing on the BOL manipulation part. That is, I've never been in accounting, so that's something that I'm not like the strongest at. So I brought HaulPay on here with us. They have a really in-depth SOP as they're coming through all the invoices and rate confirmations and BOLs and all that stuff on what all to look for. So as they're doing that, I was talking to them and they were telling me just kind of their whole process, and I'm like, "Geez, Louise, that's insane." But it is very manual, and that's kind of surprising to me. You would think it'd be a little bit more automated, but like Joanna on here was saying, which we'll jump into her on here in just a second, but whenever she was on here, she was basically saying, you can have as much automation as you need to, but that human eye, that's just it's kind of irreplaceable. You can't catch everything, right? So pretty cool to have her on. And I think that will be probably my next step is writing a good SOP for BOL training and accounting team. So if anybody out there has this already written up, I would love to see it and be able to kind of add to it and share it as the fraud girl, newsletters and having that documentation out there. So, anyways, well, let's jump into it. Great guest on here, kind of short and sweet, but going over just really what to look for. What are some key signs? These fraudsters are sometimes super slick on things, but sometimes they really make it obvious for us. So, she'll kind of deep dive into all of that as well. But let's go ahead and jump in it. Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining me. If you want to introduce yourself, kind of give a little bit of history about you, and then we'll jump in it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. My name is Joanna. I currently work for HaulPay, a factoring company, and I handle basically all the collections, manager of account management there. Yeah, thank you for having me.
For sure. Yeah, I reached out to you guys because I know you guys are like doing big things with BOL manipulation. Of course, being a factoring company, you guys see all sorts of different paperwork and things like that. So I kind of given you a little bit of a heads up, but my whole series this month's about cluster theft and BOL manipulation and how like AI now kind of makes the BOL manipulation a bit, I think, easier.
Yeah.
So I guess what are some things mainly that you see like tell signs that I think is probably hopefully kind of obvious to people, but I bet a lot of people miss.
Yeah.
Wanna give your, spiel on that.
Yeah, so basically when it comes to BL manipulation, it's when someone alters the shipment details on the document to basically misrepresent the load, right? So it can be as simple as changing the address or, as major as fabricating an entire document. And unfortunately it does happen more than we actually realize. And, it's basically used by, bad actors to commit fraud, inflate revenue, and bypass compliance. It really directly impacts carriers, brokers, shippers, and factoring companies. Some key warning signs, and some red flags to watch for is, well, on the document itself, it would be inconsistent fonts and formatting, looking for different font styles, spacing, different alignment, things like that. Sometimes missing and altered signatures. So missing important things such as like stamped signatures that look like they were cut and pasted into the document, missing, or even sometimes you can see the whiteout or digital editing mark, which is a little bit more, obvious on the documents as well. And another thing would be suspicious shipment details that don't add up, like delivery times that don't make sense, unusual commodity descriptions. Sometimes, if it doesn't have a specific good, it'll say something like freight of all kinds. That could be a little misleading as well. Weight manipulation, and really also too, if a broker or carrier is pushing you to quickly fund loads without documents, or, they keep submitting the same documents, making small edits, that's worth questioning.
Yeah, definitely. I think the pushing for a long time, a lot of people gave quick payout or fuel
Yeah.
advances and things like that. I think we've gotten better as an industry by not really letting that happen. Like, you only get quick pay if you're been done X amount of loads or something like that. But like as a factoring company, because typically you guys usually pay pretty quickly, there typically like a holding period that you guys automatically set, or what are some, I guess, what's some advice for that, either if they're using a factoring company or if they're not?
Yeah. So one important thing is training up your team, right? So creating those SOPs that, catch all this stuff early on. So for us, it's always cross checking BOLs with rate confirmations, PODs, and dispatch records. So that's important. Matching up the emails with what you have in your system in place. So, always cross checking that is important. Sometimes the immediate red flag is the domain not matching with what the actual debtor has. And sometimes the difference could be as small as .org, .com, and things like that are really important. Looking at the debtor's website to see what their actual domain is, and cross checking that stuff is really important. And, as I mentioned, don't be afraid to also call the shipper and the consignee directly to confirm details, right? So, it's really important that you train your team early on and that they follow SOP, because that's going to be the difference really on whether, you're going to let one of those loads slip on, or, catch it early on. And that's going to be a big difference.
So mainly like an SOP. So like I'm familiar with the carrier vetting SOP because I
Yeah.
created one of those. But the SOPs for accounting, I guess, can you like dummy me through that?
Yeah, yeah. So the first thing would be, right, is cross-check referencing the documents with what you have in your system, right? So
Mhm.
when you verify a broker, a debtor, a shipper in your system, that's the first step, is making sure that you have the correct information there. And that goes with, calling the debtor directly to ensure that you have the correct phone number, their correct emails, right? So before you even start like the NOA verification for factoring, the first step is verifying the debtor profile. Once
Okay.
you have that set, then you go and you verify the relationship, which would be the carrier and the debtor on our end, right?
Mhm.
Then once you're verifying that, a lot of the times you get notified right then and there, like, we've never worked with this carrier, right? If it is a
Yeah.
fraudulent load. And so that's a major red flag for us. So it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? And then we start looking into the documents and seeing like, well, actually the email here doesn't match with the domain here. So we start kind of, cross-referencing those details. And then at the same time, when we send rate verification emails and phone calls, we only call the information that's on our debtor profile. We never call off the Raycon. So that's important too, right? Because if they're using a Raycon that is altered and you're calling that information, you're going to get all the info you're looking for based off of what's there.
Yeah, they're
So
gonna tell you all the right things because they
yeah,
prove it. Yeah.
yeah. So that's why it's important that it all starts with getting the right info on the debtor profile, and that the SOP states, that you only verify information directly with the debtor and never, on the Raycon. So
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the accounting world has kind of had the last bat at fraud. I mean, like I said, the quick pay
yeah,
and bill advances and stuff, I think that a lot of that has stopped. But I don't think the accounting team necessarily is trained up as much as like a carrier sales rep is in an org.
yeah,
And I think that's where really before you hit the actual payment, like send out a
yeah,
check or whatever, you need to do all your cross referencing there.
yeah,
Um, and I'm assuming, like, you depending especially on the size of your organization, you're probably getting invoices for loads that don't even exist in your system. So it's like making sure you're looking at everything, like
yeah,
you said, which can take time. Now,
yeah.
does HaulPay do like automation on that and like make it where like it does sync up with their like TMS and things like that as well? Or
So we have two sides of our factoring, right? We have the carrier side and the broker side. So the carrier side is a little bit more manual, I would say, than the actual broker client side. But we do have a system right now where we're consistently checking the information and matching it up with what is in our system with what is on the actual document. On the broker side, we do have a little bit more automation with the TMS and, basically whatever the broker is using. So all that information kind of matches up with our system when it gets integrated over and the load kind of crosses over. So
yeah.
we do have that
So it's kind of
insight.
like
Yeah.
checking that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Does because I think with AI, that's probably the biggest scare now that that's out there and the
Yeah.
BO manipulations there. Are you seeing things like that come through more? And is there a different technique in spotting those type of, changes?
So I would say it's still it's still going to come down to for us verifying directly with the debtor.
Ok
So let's say, right, they're using AI and the document looks 100%, everything matches, but it has all the email, everything cross checks and looks good. If we call the debtor and they tell us we don't have this load, that load doesn't exist, then that's a immediate red flags. We will investigate going forward on that, and we won't process if it doesn't, if the debtor's telling us that they don't have this load, they don't have the load. We obviously ask questions to try to see maybe it was assigned to another load number, because those things happen too, right?
Right,
But yeah, we our number one thing is checking with the debtor always.
right.
So
Well, you can't ask too many questions, that's for
yeah.
sure, when it comes to
Yeah.
submitting the payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a way, or maybe this would be something that is built in the future or something, but
Yeah.
kind of like how now colleges and high school, like my daughter was telling me how she submitted a paper and she did she threw it in chat GBT to check some things and then rescanned it and then it got flagged as like whatever. She's like,
Yeah.
I did write everything. It just checked me. So
Yeah.
there's, colleges or colleges and high school are using whatever to detect that chat GBT had touched it. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that will probably come out soon where you can kind of see back end stuff like, hey, this document was
Yeah.
altered by something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I'm sure our development team and product team are already looking into that, to kinda integrate it into our system, because that would be really nice, right? Like, where it kinda kicks it out to a different status, like, "Hey, this was altered at some point," right?
right,
Or AI was used to make this document for whatever reason, and kinda sends it off to, like, an extra review, right? So,
right.
yeah, that is definitely gonna be nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting what all the AI can do in this and not tell I mean, AI is great. Like I'm sure you use it all the time too. I
Yeah.
use GPT. I mean, that's like my best friend. So I
Yeah.
talk I need to name it. I need to like type in there and say like,
Yeah.
what should I name you? But I think
Yeah.
it's also can be used for bad, which is the bad part about it. And so I think
Yeah.
the like you were saying, like the whiteout, like a lot of times that's not happening anymore. They're just able to
Yeah.
like quickly scan something and change something. But the
Yeah.
mismatched fonts, I'm thinking will probably as AI grows and gets better, will be harder and harder to detect. So that's
Yeah.
gonna be like a interesting,
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah. I will say our SOPs are pretty strong on that end, so I
Yeah,
haven't seen we I truthfully, I haven't seen much that has been put through our system that, we process, so I
right.
will, very
Yeah.
proud of our SOP there.
Yeah. Sounds like you guys are pretty strenuent, if I can say the right
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that the biggest thing is it comes from the main accounting team, like, before it even hits because so in your process, does it normally hit, like, the broker's accounting team and then it flows over to you guys, or you guys just are basically their accounting team?
No, so we're their accounting team.
Okay.
The way art works is it goes through our rate verification team, and that's our boulder right there. They're the ones that catch these things early on. So if it were to go through, then it would hit our accounting team, which would be the team that is now working on the collections of it, right? And then that's when the debtor can tell us, hey, this is an art load. First thing is our rate verification team. They're the ones that catch this stuff. Yeah.
And so the accounting team, whenever they're reaching out to, like, the actual debtor, is that whenever they figure out, like, pallet count? Because that's kind of the biggest thing with cluster theft is it's where it will be quantity 55, and they'll take the 5 off, and then they'll just deliver 5 quantity or pallets or
Yeah.
whatever. And then but it's just that simple little number and, the receiver's like, "Oh, 5, 5, cool," like,
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
off, whatever. And I think EBOLs will definitely help with that. Are you seeing a lot of EBOLs, or are you seeing still the manual sign off and stuff like that?
I would say about 90% is still the manual bill of ladings, but we do see some e-bells, especially for like auto shipments, right? Because those are a little bit they're bigger loads, so those are sent through an e-bill, and those are, with any of them, they're as we do the rate verification, we also do a BOL verification, so we're also being told at the same time the rate and approve the BOL at the same time. So if there is some differences on that end, then it does get, flagged there as well.
It's probably like every document you see, it's like instead of just trusting it and then verifying that it's good, it's like don't trust it until you verify
Yeah.
it's good. It's like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
every document's fraud until it gets through me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
wild. Well, I think, the as fraud evolves and stuff like that, obviously the payment side's huge, and I've even seen where the shippers are like a fake shipper is sending it to a fake carrier, or they send it to a broker, and then the broker hires this fake carrier because 'cause they're like, "Oh, yeah, I know the lane, and I'll pick it up and whatever," and
Yeah.
then they get paid kind of before everything like that. On the we're talking to debtor side, is there whenever you're I guess, vetting a shipper. Is there anything that you guys do on that front too, on the debtor side? Or if you guys don't do anything, is there anything that you would recommend, a broker to do as they're, taking on new shippers?
Yeah, so we vet all our debtors, shippers, brokers, everything. So there has been times where that happens where brokers, carriers are trying to, it's a two-way fraud thing, right? Where the
Yeah.
shipper's involved and the carrier. So again, that also falls in vetting our debtors strongly. So we try to find, websites that the debtor is connected to. Sometimes we see that domain discrepancy where they're using at Gmail and then it's at I'm
Yeah.
just saying like DHL.org, right? So it's important that as we're vetting that debtors get vetted the same way as, our loads that we're pushing through. So yeah. And a lot of the times they'll come in as a new debtor, right? We've never heard of them. And then later on we find out that it's connected like this, DHL expedited and this one's DHL brokerage. And, they sound the same, but this one is the fraud and this one's the right one, right?
Yeah.
So, connecting all of that and verifying is really important for us.
Yeah, and definitely, I think that's why it's great to use a service similar to HaulPay out there
Yeah,
because you guys do have such a database outside of just your as like a broker or whatever, just outside of
yeah,
my little realm of shippers. You can
yeah,
see, okay, all these other things and even receivers and the paperwork and kind of normal norms, and you're able to cross reference that as well.
yeah, yeah,
And even on the carrier level, I guess too, you can see, okay, this carrier does X and so forth. Interesting. Well, yeah, I know there's not like I guess a ton to talk about this, but is there any other tips and tricks that you have out there for spotting these bad guys on the accounting side?
yeah. I mean, my advice again is just going to be, always cross check BOLs with the Raycons, PODs, and dispatch records. Don't be afraid to call the shipper and the consignee, directly to confirm the details. Use tools that check document like metadata and detect edits as well.
Hmm.
And most importantly, like train your team, create strong SOPs. A well-trained eye that follows SOPs can often, spot inconsistencies that a system can't.
Yeah, I think it's great to automate things, all that stuff. Like there's softwares for everything nowadays, but I still think that human element, you just can't take that out. You got to have
Yeah.
somebody check it because there's just little tiny things that you're like, oh, this doesn't make
Yep.
sense.
Yeah.
Like even whenever you're
Absolutely.
getting like an insurance certificate or whatever, there's just little baby things that you're like, this doesn't make sense at all. Yeah. Well, cool. I guess that's kind of all I have. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.